see you.
Good morning to Bradley Salisbury, Headmaster at Dean Close. How are you this morning?
Yeah, really well, thank you. It's a beautiful day here. It's always sunny in Cheltenham, but it's particularly nice today, actually. So, yeah, we're in a good place, thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Bradley, who or what led you into education?
It's really interesting, actually. I think school days were not always smooth for me, and so it wasn't the obvious route. I suspect if you were to talk to some of my teachers from school, they might be interested to know what I'm doing now. But I think ultimately it combined all the things I really love. So I really love my subject, first of all, which is religious studies. The kind of questions that engages us in are great. So that was my starting point. But I've always enjoyed sport, music, drama, and anything outside the classroom too. And fundamentally, I think I just found after I left school that I just really enjoyed working with teenagers and young people in particular. I think there are some great highs and some journeys that you go through with them in school. And I think that's always been the drive for me, working with people who now lead those young people through them. And there's nothing better really than just seeing teenagers do things which they didn't think they could do. That's an absolute joy for me and continues to be the reason I'm in it, really.
And you joined Dean Close initially as deputy head, I think, in 2009, and then became headmaster in 2016. Was it always, I mean, following on from what you just said, was it always this age band that you were particularly interested in? I mean, have you always worked in senior schools?
I spent a couple of years straight after school working in a prep school, Port Regis School down in Dorset, which was, I suppose, my sort of kickstart out, an amazing time with the team down there. But I've just enjoyed teenagers. I think there's a level of conversation that I really enjoy, and the sort of the challenge as well, and working with them. And I think that privilege of being at the end point of school, we're very fortunate on this site that we get to see the whole journey through, from our pre-prep through our prep school and then through into the senior school. And to be at the end point, it is a real privilege to build on the work of colleagues. And at the end of the year, we celebrate with those who have been with us all the way through and been that journey through. And I think I then have the chance now to catch up with pupils who have left school and seeing the things that we have done having an impact on their university experience, on their gap year experience, on their first jobs, first relationships. So I really like this particular place. I have complete admiration for those who work with younger children. Just the patience required of that is a skill level. It's just, I don't have that skill. That's the energy that's required. So
yeah,
it's a great place for me.
I should think they'd have equal respect for your job, to be honest, but
yeah.
Of course, I guess.
Yeah.
And how do you think education, it's a big question, but how do you think education has changed shape over the last few years, if indeed you do?
I really do, actually. I think the emphasis has changed. I think a few years ago, the top schools were always just going to be those with the top academic results. And I think there's a breadth now that's come through. There's been some very powerful social movements which have had an impact on that. And we've seen that through looking at, particularly around issues of equality and diversity. And it's no longer really acceptable for a school to narrow out particular individuals. You know, we have a responsibility, and it's an amazing ambition to try to include as many people as possible in the work that we do. So that idea of equality, diversity, and just making sure that you really stretch and challenge everybody in your school is a key driver for us. So I think that's a change. It's been reflected in the way that we talk about education, the conversations that come from government, but also the inspection framework that we see. The other change I think we've seen is groups of schools, and I'm very fortunate to not be a standalone school. We have the opportunity to work as a foundation, and that's been a big change for us over the last 6 or 7 years, which enables me as a head to work with other heads across our foundation, but also just to have that confidence. So as we face financial uncertainties, maybe in the years to come, to feel part of a stronger base and to be able to plan ahead because we can see the numbers coming through, just gives us confidence as to what we might face in the future. So I think there is that kind of sense of a broader approach to education, I think, is something that's really worked through. I think the third bit I would say is our work alongside state school partners.
Yeah.
And just schools generally. So Cheltenham is, I think I would have to say, there's probably not a better place for education in the country. We've got amazing examples of every type of school, and we get to work alongside all of our colleagues through the Cheltenham Education Partnership. And that was something that wasn't happening a few years ago. So we're just beginning to break down barriers and be able to share, good practice from, state academies, grammar schools, independent day and independent boarding schools. And here in Cheltenham, I think we are particularly blessed in that way.
And it's really interesting, actually. I was going to touch on the group element. I mean, because it can be quite a lonely job being a head, and it must be so comforting to have the benefit of other heads within the sort of safe place of being able to discuss issues that you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so yesterday as an example, I sat down with our warden, our CEO, Emma Taylor. Emma's an experienced head, 10 years leading a school, as well as now leading the foundation for the last 5 or 6 years. So, and I was able to sit through and talk through some sort of personal ethical issues, some leadership questions. How am I doing the job? And there's a trust relationship there. And I think that's, to sit down for an hour a week, to be challenged and questioned and sort of nudged from time to time, but also encouraged. And I have great relationships. A little bit of cheekiness as well with my fellow heads. Just makes the day feel a little bit alive, I think.
And what sort of percentage, Bradley, do you move throughout the system, as it were, who are at Dean Close Prep, for example, and then move through to senior, or indeed the other schools?
Yeah, I mean, there are natural moving points within schools, and I think that's a really healthy thing for most of our students to arrive from different schools and to go to different schools. But I suppose at the end, we might have about 10% of our school that has come all the way through from age 2 or 3. All the way through, but we would expect around about 90 to 95% to move from our prep school at the age of 13 into the senior school. I think that's because a lot of parents will choose secondary or GCSEs, and so that the Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, 11 to 16 is kind of a block. And one of the things I really like about essentially our middle school system are that our students get to stay a little bit younger for a bit longer in years 7 and 8 in the prep school. And then they get another chance to move and to leave some of those childish ways behind maybe, and have a really focused years 9, 10, 11, which are very much aimed at GCSE. So it really works well for us, and we talk a lot with our prep school here about curriculum, about our co-curriculum, pastorally, how we're doing things. So there is some consistency, but also we can adapt and make it right for the age of kids that we're looking after.
And within the sort of stringent syllabus and structure of the exam world that we all live in, how do you encourage your pupils to be free thinkers and to think independently and to start to sort of carve out their career, their character?
It's difficult, I think. It's a challenge, not impossible at all. I think there's trying to get the balance between, we want our young people to be individuals, and we will talk a lot about there not being a typical Decanian. Because there just isn't. I mean, I can look across the dining room and everybody is an individual there, and that's at the heart of who we are as a school. And I think therefore you need to provide a range of activities and a curriculum that's broad. So we've added 3 new A-levels this year, sociology, media studies and photography, because we just felt we needed a little bit more breadth to make sure that we provided that challenge. And I think then in our co-curricular, again, what we've seen is we've got just a wider variety of activities now. So one that I often will reference is the Dungeons and Dragons Club. I went to see them in action last year, and I was in this room for half an hour, and everybody else clearly knew exactly what was happening and what was being talked about. And I didn't have a clue, didn't understand a single word of it, and left none the wiser. But for those young people in that room at that time, that was brilliant. We have a Formula 1 club, we've got a stitch club, cross-stitching. And just that kind of range of small activities, they can be the things which people love. We have a number who do their adventure, and for whom kayaking is the best thing that they do, or mountain biking is the best thing they do. It's not a world that I particularly understand, but I can see the impact that it has on that young person. There might be only 5 or 6 doing it, as opposed to maybe a rugby fixture which might have 20 of our boys involved. So that variety, I think, is really key. But I think the bit that underpins it is we set our goal sort of 10 years after school. We want to meet people 10 years after who have pursued their own pathway, who have found their own route through. And I think the conversations now around careers, it's not just university. I think more people are questioning that. Maybe it's a degree apprenticeship, maybe it's straight into work, maybe it's 1 or 2 years out, but still the vast majority, 85–90% will go straight to university. But the more and more we're having that conversation, we've got 10% this year looking at degree apprenticeships, and I think there is change happening in that area too.
Definitely. So whilst there may not be a typical Dean Close child or young adult, I should say, do you think there are sort of a thread of characteristics that bind Deconians together?
Yeah, I think there are. I'm always slightly cautious, and I'm always told I shouldn't be, but I'm slightly cautious to kind of claim anything too much, because it's, we work in partnership with parents, and we have young people joining us from other schools. So, but there was a nice story that I heard the other day where a parent came to see us looking for a place for her daughter, and she said the reason I've come to Dean Close is that she asked her elder children, which school had the kindest students, and they had no connections to Dean Close. Immediately said everyone they'd met from Dean Close was kind.
Oh.
And I love that. I mean, you can imagine I was chuffed to bits with that particular comment. I think because it shows empathy, it shows courage, sometimes takes a bit of courage to be kind. It shows an awareness of other people and a lack of selfishness. So I think we talk about our values being courage, contribution, and love, and they're all quite bold statements, if you like, and we could have chosen different values, but we think the combination of those are reflected in our people body. I think they genuinely are down to earth, kind, thoughtful people, and I think if you are that, then you're probably going to do okay.
Yeah, no, it's a very good foundation for sure, and not least in those teenage years, which are can be very hard to navigate, particularly I think with, well, I suppose every generation says it, but I do think the modern teens have got a lot to handle.
Yeah.
Lives seem to be so transparent to everybody all the time. What sort of support do you think you can offer them, particularly during their years with you?
So we have kind of we're a really well trained staff team, and we talk about those kind of issues an awful lot, and we try and share as much of that with our parent body. And one of the best things that we can do, I think, is to equip parents to have that conversation. And then the third strand is obviously the pupils themselves, and they can be our most powerful voice. Because let's be brutally honest, if somebody of my age starts to tell a 16, 17-year-old about social media and which sites are good and which influencers are powerful, I mean, I've got no authority in that area. But we do find that our sixth formers and those who have recently left are incredibly powerful, because they have made mistakes and learned some lessons, and also seen what works really well in their peer group and what doesn't. How do you manage your social media? What do you like and not like? So I think one of the best things we can do is to be the most knowledgeable that we can about what's going on. Sure. To have really good relationships with the pupils, so that they can respect that view, but also that we make use of all the tools around us, so parents, pupils, outside agencies, and we do that on a fairly regular basis. But there are new challenges coming all the time. The flip side, I think I would say, is I think this generation are absolutely phenomenal. They care more, they're more active than previous generations. They are more bothered about the environment, about issues around equality and other people. And I have people who have set up businesses online, who are more engaged in commerce and entrepreneurship. This is, I think, is a really exciting generation. They do have some challenges, but every generation does. But I'm really excited about what they're going to do and what they're going to bring to our society.
And I think they've learnt resilience, which I think is such a buzzword, but I mean, it's so important in life, because as you mentioned earlier, you've got to make mistakes to learn. And I think if we're creating a kind of perfect society where that's not acceptable, then I think we're cutting off all creativity. Yeah, absolutely. And it's easy for us to present an image, isn't it? Particularly, with our sort of marketing conversation, that kind of thing, that everything's going to be perfect. Yeah. There are going to be no bumps in the road. And actually, I really like some bumps in the road, and school is a great place to make mistakes. I made an absolute catalogue of mistakes going through school. I'm just really fortunate there's no video or photographs of those. I love the fact that all these ridiculous mullet haircuts that we see are all now catalogued, and they're going to have to explain those haircuts to their children in the years to come. Absolutely. But they are phenomenally resilient, and I think there is a level of support that they give to one another through those things. And if you look particularly maybe at our international students, so we are really fortunate to be in a position to support some kids from Ukraine at the moment. And I can't begin to comprehend what that must feel like for them. No. For us to be able to walk alongside them through that is nothing short of a privilege. It really is. Totally agreed. And what sort of role does boarding play at Dean Close? Is that something that lots take up, and is it something that you champion? So I was a boarder myself from the age of 11, and I think that's life has changed in boarding schools since that time, and I'm really pleased to say that.
I enjoyed my boarding experience, but things are very different now, and I think there's probably never been a better time. So about 50% of our school boards. The vast majority of that is full boarding, but we have some who stay for 1 night a week, some for 4 nights a week. And I think in some ways, I think we're entering the golden age of boarding. It's never been safer, and schools have in the past got things wrong on that. But this boarding now is safe. It is more fun. We do a lot more activities. The facilities are better.
Yeah.
Certainly, in my days, it was cold showers most mornings. The relationships between juniors and seniors are really positive. If you'd walked into one of our houses last night at about 7:15, you'd have seen Doctor Who Club taking place with a member of the upper sixth leading that, and a Lego club happening. And those relationships, there is still a nice and gentle respect of senior years, but it's not that kind of oppression that used to be there.
No,
I think for many working families, for busy parents, for us to be able to provide that stability of care, and I think it used to be maybe a long time ago that schools kind of slightly replaced the parent in that role, and now we work absolutely alongside. And for our international families, we now have online parents meetings. We're streaming more events, so we streamed our house singing, and all of a sudden parents can be really, really part of that. It's a slightly risky thing to stream your house singing competition. You never quite know what's going to happen. But it's a community event, and we love to share that out. So I think because of these aren't sterile environments, these are safe places to grow where people will make mistakes and learn. And I think boarding communities are a really exciting part of that. It's not for everybody. And we have half of our school that are day pupils, and our job is to look after both those quite different groups and different needs as well as we can. But there's a lot of laughter in the houses, and there's a lot of jokes, most of which I don't really understand. But I love seeing a boarding house to come together and do something together, and whether that's sharing a pizza or singing a song, or definitely it's an option that should be there for the people that need it. Absolutely.
And Bradley, just to wrap up, on a more personal level, if and when you do switch off, what do you enjoy doing?
Yeah, it's not easy during term time. Unfortunately, I'm part of a local church here, and that community is great. That works really well for me. So once a week, I'm able to go and spend some time away. And then in the holidays, spend a lot of time in Pembrokeshire, which is the most stunning part of Wales. And I had a lot of time on the coastal path or in the water with friends and family. And I think if you're out and about in nature, being blasted by the wind and the sea, for me, there's not much better than that. Really, that's a good day. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bradley. Lovely to chat, and I hope that I can come and visit you soon. Oh, that'd be great. Antonia, thank you very much for your time, and thanks everybody for joining us today. It's really good to have you all with us. Thanks, Antonia. Bye-bye now.